My name is Marcel Lejeune. I work in campus ministry at Texas A&M. I've been working with young people for about 12 years now. And I have to tell you, I see a lot of young people who are preparing for marriage, really excited about that. And I see a lot of young people who struggle with some of the church's teachings on marriage and relationships and sexuality and issues of that nature. And I have to admit that when I was in college myself, I struggled with some of those teachings. And I know for some of you, it might seem like ages ago that this old bald man, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but I struggled probably and had all the questions that any young person today would have about these issues. And a real honest dialogue about them, I think, can't hurt anybody. And I'll tell you, through the course of my marriage, I've really learned what it means to love another human being, to really take hold of my marriage and my vocation as a married man and father, as a husband, and to understand what it means to really give the gift of myself and love to another human being. And I'm still learning that day in and day out by the practice of our marriage. And I have to say that one of the things, when we first got married, we were terrible at being married. The first year of our marriage was not easy. And I always tell young people that if it weren't for God in the middle of our marriage, I don't think my wife and I would have lasted that first year, wouldn't be married anymore. And it's kind of a hard reality. Marriage is not easy. Any relationship that is worth it is going to have conflict. Any relationship that is lasting you're gonna get annoyed with the other person, and all those lovely feelings of oh, I'm in the clouds and I'm walking on cloud nine, all that, it's gonna go away sometimes. And that just happens. But I truly believe that where real love sets in is when we learn to overcome just the feeling of love, the emotion of love. When I don't really feel good about my wife is when I really start to love her. Because what I define love as, and I don't know that anybody has ever disagreed with this definition of love, it's choosing what is best for the other person despite what it might cost me, despite what the decisions I have to make. So choosing what's best for the other person. And if I do that day in and day out, that means, okay, yeah, there are times I come home and I'm really tired. I've had a long day. I worked a 12-hour day, and these college students just suck the life out of me, you know? And then what ends up happening, I come home and there's dishes piled in the sink this high. My wife has had probably a harder day. We got 5 kids. She's been taking care of this in our house and paying the bills and running people here and there and making sure that dinner's cooked, etc. And she's just worn thin. And I might be worn thin too. So whose responsibility is it? Well, guess what? It's both of our responsibility. And if I walk in with the attitude, you're here to serve me, what am I going to get out of it? I think that's the default position of most people when they enter into a relationship. What's in it for me? And that's the wrong position to be in. The right position and the way we grow in love is to say, what can I do to love the other person? How can I choose that person's best interest today? How can I choose them today? And the way I had my deepest conversion to loving my wife and my family was when I decided I was going to put this whole definition to the test. And for a month, for 30 days, I decided I was going to get up and I was going to do the dishes right after dinner as quickly as I possibly could, because I hated doing the dishes. I mean, I hated doing the dishes. Dishes were the worst thing in the world because I grew up and my mom would yell, "Come do the dishes," and I hated doing the dishes. And I finally get down there and I'd have to scrub those dishes. And, you know, the food's caked on by then. This is terrible. And so finally, I get to the point where I'm married and the dishes, I still hate them, I realize. But my wife, what does my wife want me to do to love her? She wants me to do the dishes and to take out the trash and to help clean the house. But what did I want to do to love my wife? Well, what every guy wants to do to love his wife, you know? Hey, let's kiss and let's have a back massage and those kind of things, right? But that didn't necessarily, my wife is like, that's great, that's part of it, but if you really want to love me and show me your love, let's do the dishes. And until I realized that, I wasn't loving my wife. That wasn't truly love. It wasn't choosing what was best for her. So I started doing the dishes and taking out the trash and bathing the kids when they were small for 30 days. And I had to force out a grin at the beginning of it. At the end of it, I realized I'm really enjoying this because I get to serve God and I get to serve my wife, and look at the change in our relationship. And we were sitting in bed one night at the end of the day, and I said, "Honey, how do you think our marriage is going?" And she said, "It's never been better." And I said, "Well, you want to know why?" She said, "What do you mean, why? It just is." you know. And I said, no, honey, the reason why is because for 30 days I've been really intentionally deciding I'm going to love you how you want to be loved, not necessarily how I want to love you. Because I want to choose what's best for you, even if it costs me something. And it cost me my comfort and what I wanted to do. And it transformed our marriage. Because we used to have those arguments in the house. Oh, why don't you help me around the house? Oh, I did. I took out the trash and I mowed the lawn. Well, yeah, that was a week ago. Well, I got to tell you, men never, ever try to keep track of scorekeeping when it comes to housework. You're going to lose every time. So my wife, it transformed our marriage. We never argue like that. Ever since that day, we've never had that discussion, why don't you help me around the house anymore? Because I know that's how my wife wants me to love her, and she feels closer to me, and it's strengthened our marriage since that day. It has transformed fundamentally the core of how we relate to one another. And I constantly ask the question, how can I love my wife better? And sometimes I ask her, how can I love you better? And what can I do to be a better husband? And I don't do so self-servingly necessarily. Oh, you know, I'm going to be the greatest husband in the world. No, I'm a grumpy toot sometimes. You know, I'm not very good sometimes. Thank God for confession. But the fact is that our marriage is awesome. Our marriage is really good. It's not perfect, but it works. And that's what everybody really wants in a marriage. For an engaged couple, if you ask any engaged couple, do you want a really good, strong marriage that's going to last till death do us part? Of course they do. But what do they concretely do to make that happen? And it takes sacrifice. Love is sacrificial. It gets out of yourself, it gets out of your selfishness, and it says, I love that person with everything I am. And even if that means I have to have self-control sexually, even if that means I'm going to give in a way that I don't necessarily want to, if it means I have to overcome a bad habit, if it means anything, I will do it for that person because that person is who I'm called to love. And that's what marriage is all about. And when I realized that, it just transformed things.